Okay, right, I'm getting the signal that we are now broadcasting live. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Local Democratic Framework Subcommittee for the LDF. It's the 22nd of September, no it's not, February, and the meeting is now open. So, members, I trust that you all have the papers in front of you. Can I go to agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence? Do we have any apologies for absence? No, thank you. We've got a full house. Members, take you to agenda item number 2, which is disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Does anybody have an interest on anything on the agenda tonight? No, I cannot see anybody indicating. Thank you very much indeed. Next agenda item is number 3, which is the minutes of the meeting of the LDF subcommittee on the 26th of November. Members, I've got a copy in front of me. Can we do the 1 page of minutes for accuracy, please? So page 1.
I'll propose they're accurate.
Thank you, Ray.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Was that you, Michael? Okay,
Tony.
then, member.
Okay.
Tony, thanks, Tony. All right.
Yeah.
Members, can we just go for a vote on approving the minutes, please? Mr. Tobin, are we doing it by hand or by name?
We can do it by name, Chair. It's only take a moment.
Okay, members, by name then.
Councillor Chambers.
Approved.
Councillor Clues.
Approved.
Councillor Humphreys.
Approved.
Councillor Jarvis.
Approved.
Councillor Osborne.
Approved.
Councillor Riley.
Yep, approved. Thank you. Okay then, thank you much indeed, everybody. That takes us on to public participation, agenda item number 4. Do we have any questions from any members of the public, or do we have anything that's pre-submitted? So no questions pre-submitted. I can't hear anybody. Fiona, I can see you're logged on, but I don't have your name, so unless you'd like to say anything.
If I could just say, that's Fiona Wallace, the Conservation and Heritage Officer.
Ah, is it?
So,
there you go then.
So yeah.
Fiona is unveiled. Right, okay, then, so there's no members of the public present.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, so let's move to agenda item number 5 then, which is local plan progress. Members, I take it that everybody has read this report. Is everybody happy if we go to the recommendation and don't ask Dot to go through it? Jackie, I can see you've got your hand raised.
Yes, it's a very short report, and I suppose one of the things I was hoping was a clear time frame for when the consultation is going to start, that we are responsible for, when the inspector will give us his final ruling, and when it will go to full council either for adoption or not. And I don't see that. It may be that it's too early, or whether there are any break points that are going to happen mid-term during the local plan. It's a very brief report, and for those that are, weren't part of the hearings, I'm not sure how much substance it conveys to the LDF.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, isn't it? Fairly raised. So, Dot, do we have an update on consultation periods and the projected timeline going forward?
Yes, we're hoping that, or we're working towards the 4th of March being the start date for the consultation. And so that would mean that the closing would be the 14th of April. That's what we're working on at the moment, and all the letters and things should be going out next week on that, hopefully. As soon as I can confirm that for absolute definite, I'll email all members to make sure that they're aware of the dates before we actually do start that consultation. In terms of the next steps, I've outlined those in the paragraph 5.1 of the report, because basically, although we're doing this consultation, it's on behalf of the inspector that we're doing that consultation. So all the representations will be going back to him. He'll be aware of our timeline to when the closing date is, and hopefully that will mean that within a few weeks we should be able to hear from him and make sure that, well, hopefully that we don't need any further hearings, because at this point further hearings could take place, but we're hopeful that all the changes have been made and that there is nothing new raised, because if it has already been discussed previously at the hearings, then it won't be a matter to reopen the hearings. If we don't have to reopen the hearings, then the inspector can issue his final report, and so then adoption, hopefully, as long as everything goes to plan, that would mean that we'd be able to adopt in May, and that's what we're working towards. But I'm afraid at the time of writing the board report, we didn't have that information, so apologies for that. But
okay then, so we've got consultation from the 4th of March to the 14th of April. Do we need to take a vote on that, or is that part of the process? No. Okay, Jackie, do you have a follow-up question to what Dot's reported?
No, I mean, I recognise it's a moving process, and there's a point in time which you have to close down when you're writing a paper for it to go to members. I've got a separate question on 611, which is the costs of all of this. Your statement is that it comes out of the local plan budget. I just wondered how much we've got in that budget, whether we're going to overspend on it and have to find money from elsewhere, or what your sense is of the overall costs of the local plan. There's nothing we can do about it. It just would be helpful in the context of the length of time all of it has taken to know whether it's been an expensive operation or not.
Well, I certainly think it has been expensive. Dot?
Yes, in terms of the budget, there was a growth bid that was made last year, because we were hoping to have actually adopted the plan by now. I haven't got the exact figures in front of me, but yes, it is an expensive. But I can make sure that I can circulate those as up to date as we possibly can, and I can make sure that they are circulated if required.
Yes, please. If you do that to all members of the board, that'd be great. Jackie, any more questions, or are you happy? As can be. Okay, then, members. Unless anybody else has got any more questions about agenda item number 5, then I propose that we note the paper. There is no need for a vote on this, so members, we are accepting the recommendation of noting the report. That takes us to agenda item number 6, which is page 8 of 76 in your paper pack. Dot, are you going to present anything, or do you want? Were you hoping that we would just take this as read? Because I'm aware that Mike's done an addition.
Yeah, it's over to Mike for this one, just for the addition, but there's nothing else to add to the report.
Hi, good evening, members. It's Mike Dittman from the Forward Planning team. This is just an update to the item 6, common ground between ourselves and Solihull. Late last week, we had a response from the Solihull officers, and they've asked for 3 additional points to be noted by yourselves, by members, and they are basic factual changes that we will need to refer to in brief. Under item 3.8 on the SOG, they wish to add the text housing to just before employment land, so it should now read not approached SMBC to ask for assistance in accommodating housing or employment land. That's just a statement of fact, and we're happy. Item 3.10 in the SOCG is no longer needed, as the HEDNA, that's the Housing and Economic Development document, the needs assessment document, has now been progressed. So item 3.10 should be deleted from the SOGD. And finally, 4.1.1 This is the end of the outstanding issues, disagreement and areas for further work. They are looking for us to add the text reference that's North Borough Council, not District Council as they identified. North Warwickshire Borough Council believe that Solihull Metropolitan Borough Council have met the legal duty to cooperate test. Your officers are happy for that additional text to come in, as it's to some extent a matter of fact. The legal duty to cooperate is not a legal duty to agree. It is a reflection on the process itself, and we are satisfied with that. If members are happy with those changes to be added to the SOCG, then we're happy for the SOCG to go forward for agreement and for final signing. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Dot, sorry, Jackie, I can see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I suppose I was trying to understand where the duty of cooperate translates into this statement of common ground, because last time we were particularly concerned about the extent, or rather not, to which Solihull had met the housing needs of the Greater Birmingham area, and the fact that their plan did seem to have quite a significant shortfall as compared with ours in that duty to cooperate with that. And I thought that was grounds for it not being viewed as a sound plan, and that was going to go forward as our response to the inspector that would be handling their plan. So I'm curious as to why we've got a statement of common ground when actually we've got such a big kind of flaw in the basis of the agreements between us about the unmet housing needs and the gap. It may be that, Mike, you explain that duty to cooperate isn't duty to agree, but somewhere between that and statement of common ground, I've kind of lost the plot about what we're actually saying about whether Solihull have done what they should have done, and whether we think that's going to knock on effects in terms of housing needs being really pushed in our direction even more.
Thank you, Councillor. No, you are correct. That is still outstanding. It is referred to in the section 4, outstanding issues, disagreement and areas for further work. We've still got an issue which will go forward to the examination and to the inspector. So our representations are being passed to the inspector. That's the main issue. There are a number of minor issues as well regarding transport linkages to and from the areas of development they're proposing, and the HS2 international station between ourselves and Coleshill. So there are other minor issues in terms of that, but the critical key issue, which is the housing figure, is maintained as an item for disagreement, and that is what our written statements will be to the inspector. That's an outstanding issue for quite a number of authorities, and Solihull are obviously aware. This is really simply to address one of the regulation requirements for the examination process, to say, well, that outstanding issue, but as far as everything else goes, the duty to cooperate, did they agree to the processes? Did they speak to you? Solihull and ourselves have both been members of the Coventry Solihull Warwickshire Area Planning Officers meetings. They were involved in the Coventry Warwickshire Housing Market Analysis Assessment, and they are ourselves for the Greater Birmingham and Black Country Housing Market Assessment. Again, you can be a member of and bring issues to those forums, but they aren't requirements to agree, and we disagree quite strongly with Solihull, and they are aware of that. Figures and the way they have accommodated the housing figures, but we can't criticise their process. Their process, and that's the issue of soundness. The process is sound. We just don't agree with their figures, and we've said so. Does that help clarify?
Okay, Mike, just for clarification then, there's no consequence of us having to take any additional housing numbers because of this submission, from what you've just said?
No, the additional raised. I think it was in 4.1.3 and 4.1. It refers ourselves and themselves not seeking, vice versa, additional housing between ourselves. That's not the Birmingham shortfall. We aren't asking Solihull for any additional capacity, and Solihull aren't asking us to provide for them for any additional capacity. The Birmingham housing is slightly outside of those two individuals. This is between us and Solihull, not the wider Greater Birmingham housing shortfall. That still applies. That shortfall still exists, and we basically are saying Solihull should address that, because we believe that they haven't adequately addressed that. And that's basically the reference in 4.1.2, where I say there will be significant levels of unmet need in the order of at least 29,000 arriving from the Black Country, and reference to their point raised about the shortfall from Birmingham. That has, for clarity, partially been addressed by Birmingham, delivering some additional housing up to, I think it is 2031. Post 2031, there is still a significant shortfall expected. We don't feel, and that's our representation to Solihull, that that has been addressed sufficiently, and they should be doing more, whether that's greenbelt land or whether that's increasing densities or finding further housing sites within their area. That's really where the big arguments will be at the examination, and it won't be just ourselves, it will be authorities and agencies involved.
Okay, Mike, thank you much indeed. Jackie, I can see you've got your hand up. Have you got a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, no, that was a helpful explanation, Mike. Yes, it was about the transport statements in this document. So on the one hand, we've got items agreed under 3.9, which is about Solihull noting and acknowledging the potential to improve and create local transport connectivity for adjoining authorities to access employment and economic opportunities. And then under section 4, outstanding issues, we've then got both parties note the potential for improvement to public transport links and services. I mean, this morning we were talking about the Warwickshire transport strategy and the particular issues for North Warwickshire and our residents in terms of accessing employment and public transport, getting to other services. And I guess it has the feel of a kind of fudge statement. This on both parties' side. It doesn't actually commit either councils to anything that's common or specific about what we're going to do about these transport links, particularly given the significant growth areas that there are in Solihull in employment, as well as our own borough. But the crossover in terms of, around Junction 9 and links, through Solihull to Birmingham, it just feels as though that's been fudged and left to other people to kind of firm up. And that may be the reality, but shouldn't both planning authorities have something rather more to say about that in terms of a decent infrastructure for both our plans, actually, to enable the huge housing growth to have a purpose in terms of supporting the economy and employment in both boroughs.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Jackie. As you know, Warwickshire County Council are just starting a refresh of the County Council's transport strategy, which will obviously encompass North Warwickshire's. Without doubt, the A5, the A446 sit proudly there in terms of the main arterial routes, together with all of the motorway junctions that sit within the borough as potential future growth hubs, obviously, as motorway junctions always are. And then the interlinking. I know you're a keen champion of cycling. The interlinking of the green transport routes, and including bus routes, is clearly in there. Mike, am I right in thinking it's a bit too early to get into the detail around transport for this submission to Solihull? However,
Chair, yes, the officers have really, where to some extent I suppose Jackie's coming from the fudging element, have noted that there is an issue with that, and they are willing to address that. They're willing to talk with us, so further work will be needed between ourselves and Solihull, which they've agreed to. It will also involve Warwickshire County Council and information, obviously, that yourself and others have with potential for additional links, both from the station and to the Birmingham Cycle Network and the Solihull Network. Both myself and Dorothy did raise this issue at the meeting, which they did note. Unfortunately, it's not necessary or appropriate for the Statement of Common Ground to go in or provide that detail of you, because it's not really that element of work that the SOCG relates to. But it is something we will need to hold them to the fire to agree to. So further work will, but to some extent, because of the representation going to the inspector will also be referring them to these issues and saying, how have they addressed, or how are they going to address? So it doesn't let them off the hook. It only means that for this point in time, they can get through the process, through the examination. And at that point is when we can go into the detail. But if they've noted and if they agree that there is an issue in transport, the inspector will be asking them, well, how are you going to address that? So to progress the local plan, they need to start thinking about additional text or additional information to clarify that they are working with us, as well as the county council and themselves, to progress that. Still an outstanding issue that we do have, but it doesn't affect the progress of the local plan at this stage, or the provision of a statement of common ground between the two authorities. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Mike, nice one, thank you. And I suppose it's an opportune point to remind everybody that the County Council's consultation is now open on the County Council's transport strategy. So, Mike, if we could circulate all members at the Borough Council the link to the County Council's transport strategy consultation, that would be great, please.
Yeah,
thank you, Mike. Dave, I can see you've got your hand up, Dave Parsons, and then I've got Dave Humphreys.
Yeah, it's a question for Mike, really, and I appreciate that this is still a matter of contention, but I wonder, Mike, if you could remind us of the numbers that have been accepted in terms of housing from Birmingham, first of all in Warwickshire, and secondly in Solihull. What are the numbers as they stand at the moment?
The numbers that Solihull are delivering for the Greater Birmingham and Black Country HMA, this is the shortfall that was originally identified of 37,900. They, in this plan, are proposing to accommodate 2,000, I think it's 2,120, around that. It's in the report. Oh, sorry, 2597, item 3.4. The 2597 shortfall noted above represents the position as of 1st of April. The North Warwickshire notes that the contribution to the HMA up to 2031 is 2,105. Now, that is part of the issue that we and others will have with Solihull. As you're aware, we were looking at, for our borough, 3,790 of that 37,900 shortfall. Suppose you could class it as, or the fudging, as Councillor Chambers mentioned earlier, is because time has progressed, Greater Birmingham area has delivered, or Birmingham City primarily, have delivered more housing in the short term, and that's reduced the pressure on the Solihull numbers. Nevertheless, and this is significant, that pressure is only reduced up to 2031. Post 2031, as the SOCG notes, there is quite a significant shortfall, particularly from the Black Country, but also from Birmingham again. What the emerging local plan should be doing, and which is what we were doing through our local plan, is identifying potential sites and potential capacity. Now, that could be through safeguarding sites in the Greenbelt, other messages such as increasing density or finding further sites outside the Greenbelt, because I am more than aware of the Greenbelt issue with Solihull. But there's still a gap at the end of their plan, because I think it's to 36, sorry. That's 31 to 30. There's a 5-year gap where they are for any shortfall. Now, significantly from our point of view, we took quite a detailed look at the implications of the Birmingham shortfall. We looked at commuting levels, we looked at transport levels, travel to work areas, and a number of other population census figures to come to our figures, which were 10.3790. Given Solihull's far stronger relationship, physically and infrastructure terms, to Birmingham, we would expect their approach to be, in the minimum, what we did. And if they were to do that, I believe that it wouldn't be a 05, I think it is, yes, 2105 shortfall that they'd have to address. There would be a significantly larger shortfall. And I think that's the approach that many other authorities and many of the private sector would take. Now, I accept, and we've had to look at these figures in the short term, up to 2031, they are addressing the shortfall as it's been highlighted in the Greater Birmingham and Black Country housing market area figures. There's a recent statement just before Christmas that was released, which I can provide to you as well, if required, that highlights that because of the increased delivery in Birmingham, the shortfall has been reduced. Unfortunately for us, because we're already taken into account in addressing that. So our figures are already in the system and are already delivering for Birmingham shortfall. The additional, I think it's 16,000 houses that they delivered have been over and above our provision, our allocation. So we can't benefit from that increased growth in Birmingham, but Solihull have, because of the local plan position and the timing that their local plan has come forward. We're still not going to be happy with that, because we still believe that they should be looking at the longer term shortfall, that last 5 years of the plan, which they do not account for, and the fact that if they don't account, why not? And at that point, I think that's going to be the question over whether the plan progresses. Because from the inspector's point of view, he will want to know that the full plan period addresses all the shortfalls that Solihull face and all the implications, because they are part of the GBVHNA housing figures. Exactly the same way as we had to deliver and address the same issue.
Yeah, I mean, initially we were told, I mean, I represent an area where an awful lot of these houses are going. Initially, we were told we were moving early to actually reduce the number of houses. At the moment, the way it looks as though we moved early and we've been done over. You know, this doesn't look good in my view, but, you know, there we go. It doesn't look to have been a masterstroke, is all I can say.
I do those comments, and it is a matter of fact that we have been put into that position, partly as a result of Birmingham's success at getting funding to deliver the brownfield sites, which they have done very successfully. So I can't challenge them on that issue. If they hadn't done, the situation would have still been very much in the circumstances that we were facing. But what that does mean is it's only for a short period of time. As I said, up to 2031, there is still that potential that Solihull can accommodate some of that benefit.
But it has the look of a gamble that has not paid off.
It's a difficult.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, difficult one.
Yeah, fine. Sorry, I leave
David,
it there.
David, through the chair, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, members, I've got Councillor David Humphreys.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about transport. You know, I was involved at one stage with Solihull and the Combined Authority in Birmingham, and I've spent quite a few years trying to get people to consider tweaking the Sprint system. You know, if you look at Wateralton, Curdworth, Coleshill, they're right next to this main conurbation with a huge transport process. In the discussions, I take it will be a county issue to discuss whether we can tweak one or two of the routes would actually open up the whole system to those people in that part of the borough. Has that got to go ahead now as a part of a cooperation, or is that something between the county rather than the borough? Thank you.
Dot, I can see you've raised your hand.
Only just to say that, yes, it would be, and we would be involved in that. I know that the county, in terms of the preparation for the local transport plan, are doing a lot of studies, and we've been involved in some of those, and we will continue to be. And wherever we can, we will make sure that we get those advantages.
And finally, if I can just add, it was an issue that we raised with Solihull. They did note that sprint. And it is something that is still referred to in the representation that would be the inspector.
Can I just say, David, when I was dealing with, and Roger Lawrence was in charge then in the terms of trying through the whole of the combined authority, so he controlled sprints and that. His attitude was, if you've got a problem, speak to county. You're nothing to do with us. It caused a few eyebrows with the non-constituent members at that stage, but there is a sort of point to that. I don't see much pressure from county to try and open up the system. You know, we're right next door to this massive city with a huge transport system, but no access to it because it all stops the other side of the M42. They're not interested in our side of the M42 except for houses.
Well, you could say that, Dave. I can't possibly comment. Michael, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's following on from the points that some of the previous councillors who've spoken have said, reference making the most of the economic development opportunities provided by the housing infrastructure from both Solihull and ourselves. If the transport links are correct, I think there's room for both boroughs to sort of gain an advantage, but we seem on the surface to be the only one who's raising that. I think Mike framed it really well when he outlined it earlier on, that we do need to look at that. It's how we sort of encourage Solihull to look at it more. I do think that we've been missing out hugely and doing our own residents a huge disservice if we don't get those public transport links right to take advantage of all the things that are and the exciting opportunities that are being built at the minute.
Yes, Michael, I think you're spot on there. Mike, have you got any response to that, or are you noting Michael's comments?
I was just nodding in agreement, and we will be chasing Solihull to address that. They have noted it, they are aware of the issues, but we would like to see more active cooperation and agreement between the two, but that is something we will have to chase, and the county are being involved. The county are doing our own transport strategy, so it is and chase through that as well, but it is an issue that we're more than aware of, and we did stress that to them, that you know, we aren't just the neighbour that they can go to for the nice green areas. We do have significant potential links that exist that can be maximised. The sprint is one of them, but the opportunity for the wider need. To put it cynically, for instance, if you're looking to minimise housing implications and pressure, then and you need employees, well, we have them sitting next to you. So please give us access to them.
Okay, members, good debate, picking up on the salient points that are in the report and recognising the challenge of the road that lies ahead. No pun intended. Right, members, are you completed with the debate? And therefore, are you happy to move into a vote on the recommendations? Okay, David, I can see you've still got your hand up, David Humphries. Is that a comment?
It's a mistake.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
I'll take it down if I can remember how to do it.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Right, so we've got two recommendations. The first one is that the statement of common ground between the Borough Council and Solihull Metropolitan Borough Council be noted and approved for signing by the Chief Exec. And then part B of that recommendation is that members note the outstanding issues that obviously we've just debated very well. So, Mr. Tobin, can I hand over to you, please, for recommendation A?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, I think the minutes should reflect the additions that have been raised by Mr. Dittman tonight in relation to the statement of common ground, so that it's clear that it's the updated version that was voted upon.
Yes, certainly, please.
Okay, if you could vote on recommendation A, Councillor Chambers. Oh, sorry, actually, Chair, has it been formally proposed? It hasn't. Sorry.
No, I suppose it hasn't. Would somebody like to propose the recommendation?
I'll move it, Chair.
I'll second.
So that's Councillor Humphreys proposing and Councillor Jarvis seconding. Back to you, Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chambers.
Agreed.
Councillor Clues.
Agreed.
Councillor Humphreys.
Agreed.
Councillor Jarvis.
Agreed.
Councillor Osborne.
Agreed.
Councillor Riley.
Agreed. Right, thank you, members. Are you happy, Mr. Tobin?
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right, that takes us on to agenda item number 7, which is page 15 of 76 of your document pack. Dot, are you going to speak through this report? Because there's a little bit of complexity to it.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah. What you have in front of you is two draft documents, both written by the Heritage and Conservation Officer, Fiona Wallace, who's online as well, who'll be able to answer any questions if there are any. But in terms of the residential design guide that you have here, that would be related to the whole of the borough. And it's an update of the extensions design guide that the Borough Council already has, but in a lot more detail. And then the second one is a draft distinctiveness guide in terms of, in particular, the historic aspects and the identity of the potential for the area for H7, which is the land east of Polesworth and Dordon, and would be particularly related to that site. So they're both draft. We'd like to seek authority to go out for consultation, subject to, of course, them going through the planning board first. So that would be where they would go from here, would be to the planning board, just to make sure that planning members are aware of the two documents. They would then go out for consultation. The consultation would take place after the main modifications, because we want to keep them as distinct consultations. So sometime in the end of April, May time, we'd go out for consultation on these. And then I'd bring back any comments to the board or the subcommittee, and then incorporate any changes at that stage. They're here for comment. Happy to take any comments this evening. And as I say, Fiona Wallace is on the meeting as well, who'll go to help. In addition, in the report, I've just done a little up to date of what's actually happening with the site H7. It's a moving feast all the time with that site. Things are moving on in terms of that. And the main thing would be to try and organise a steering group of the H7 steering group, so that we would look towards the end of March, April time to actually have the first meeting of that. But we'd also invite along the two parishes of Dordon and Polesworth and the neighbourhood plan groups, as well as the agents for the landowners. I'm happy to take any questions, or if there's anything specific in terms of the two appendices, happy to answer those as well.
Okay, thank you, Dot. So we've got page 20 of 76, which is the draft design guide for North Warwickshire, and then page 48 of 76, which is the distinctiveness design guide for Polesworth and Dordon. So I can see I've got Jackie with a hand up. Jackie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know what the extent of the consultation is going to be around these two design guides. You refer also to the National Model Design Code, which was part of the big policy paper on how planning should change. And I suppose in reading what's there at the moment, you can see that the design principles that are in these documents, that you might build better, but it doesn't really come across as a building greener ambition, in my view. And although I'm no expert on climate change, I'm sure one could have a lot more ambition given the scale of new developments that we're planning. And I'll give you some, for instance, it talks about one of the recommendations, just a small thing, hedgehog-friendly fencing. Well, why are we going for hedgehog-friendly fencing when actually maybe what we should be asking is hedges to be built in almost every little boundary between each residence or along the boundaries of the streets. And there is nothing about the heating systems for these large estates. And given that we've just had an award for innovative green funding for our own council homes and using air source heating pumps and so on, I mean, I don't know enough about the new technologies there are, but it doesn't strike me that the greening agenda is and our commitment to zero, emissions, carbon emissions by whatever date it was we finally agreed, is it all reflected in this statement. And then there is a final thing about the electric. There's another example of electric hookups for cars, and I think what's stated there is that it might be appropriate for town centres and as appropriate in other developments. Well, given that, I don't know what year it is by which electric vehicles are going to be the new vehicles that are going to be mandatory, and that many car manufacturers are stopping producing carbon fueled vehicles. I'm not sure the building greener, basically in summary, I don't think the building greener bit is at all reflected in what we've got, and I think we need to be more ambitious. I think the consultation for these documents needs to get out to the people that know about these things. I think the climate change working group that we've got as members needs to get its teeth into this, and we need to draw from the best examples from around the country about what else needs to be incorporated into these design codes for our borough. We've got a real opportunity here, 9,670 new houses, and I don't sense that either from a wildlife or from an ecological point of view and zero carbon commitments, there's enough in this that satisfies me, and I think we need those kind of bodies to be consulted as well.
Okay, Jackie, I think they're good points, aren't they, about the green nature of the plan. I can hear an echo here. Thank you. The green nature of the plan, and also the biodiversity impacts. Dot. So 2 different questions in there. Do you want to have a go at first of all the green ambitions, and then secondly the biodiversity offsetting nature?
In terms of the green, the climate change and things like that, yes, more than happy to look at that. In terms of the local plan itself, we do have a policy about that all residential properties should have an electric charging point. So there is a hook in there that we can develop in terms of this. So we'll have a look at that and make sure that they actually are compatible across the board. Yes, happy to. Everybody on the mailing list for the local plan, which is around about 1,500 people and organisations and groups are on the mailing list, but equally can make sure that other groups are also on that mailing list as well, that are specifically for those sorts of things. So happy to look at that as well. Yeah, okay
then. Well, let's include those 2 issues for our meeting of the H7 steering group when we meet, and we'll put those on the agenda to talk through and find a positive way forward around them, which will obviously set standards for other areas as well. Right, members, anybody else, any other questions? No, thank you. Okay, then
I
we'll
was,
propose.
David, I was going to just say, let's not just limit it to things like that. I mean, I'm just thinking of fibre to the house, lots of ways of looking at other bits and pieces that will improve just not only lives in those houses, but make everything better. So there's bound to be lots of, I don't even know about rain, recycling of rainwater, etc. There must be quite a lot that we could look at once you get to that committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Dave, it's great to have a starting ambition, isn't it, to build eco-friendly homes that are carbon neutral as much as possible and make advantages or take advantage of the emerging technologies around the green agenda. Jackie, you've got your hand up again.
Well, I don't know, Chairman, if you're going to go on to the process and arrangements for H7 steering. The recommendation is that we note the work and the proposals for bringing that site to fruition and the neighbourhood planning work that's going on. But it might be worthwhile just touching on that, given that as an exemplar that's likely to be one of the first in terms of delivering these sites and cooperation across parish council boundaries and where the developers fit in all of that in producing a master plan. If Dorothy could say a little bit more about the time frame and how she's seeing that once both parishes are both ready and able to say what their preferred options might be.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point, isn't it? So points 7 and 8 on pages 17 of 76 and 18 of 76 touch on the proposals. Dot, do you want to get any more detail at this point in terms of proposals for moving forward with H7?
In terms of H7, the Dordon Neighbourhood Plan group are looking to actually have a draft of their neighbourhood plan around about the end of March, and there is a draft of a framework for a master plan that they've also been involved with. I'm currently talking with Polesworth Parish Council to see how we can engage with them in that process as well, because they're slightly behind. Behind where the Dordon Neighbourhood Plan group are. So we're just trying to pull all that together at the moment. In terms of when a planning application is likely, early indications and during the hearings it was indicated it would be summer, but it's unlikely to be the summer. In my opinion, it's more likely to be the autumn winter time at the very, very earliest. And again, as soon as we have any firmer dates, we'll let members know of those. That's all that I can really update, I think, at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dot. Jane, I can see Jane Farrow, you've got your hand up.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, it's just a quickie. Talking about developments and electric power points, there's something actually I was thinking about very, very recently, and looking at us in particular in Coleshill, there are a great number of unused garages that people don't seem to want anymore. And it's just a thought that if these could be fitted with power points for electric cars, and I think people would take them up and look after them, and they could be made to complement any development that's going to go on. And in Solihull, I know they have the same issue, especially on, for instance, Chelmsley Wood, places like that. There's lots of garages near the houses, and people, the odd person here and there, I know people that have taken them on, even though they've got their own drive. And then they look after them as well, you know. But if they were done on block and fitted out like this, I could see it as only encouraging people to go that way. I know electric vehicles are not cheap and not everybody can have it, but people have vans for work, and there's a lot of people trying to get those, because I know if they work around, say, Birmingham, it's going to cost them a fortune to get in and out on the ring road. So if they've got electric engine, they won't have to pay anything. So I just a thought. I was thinking and talking about this not long ago, and as I say, there are quite a number of these dilapidated garages, and they're just a bit of an eyesore at the moment. And they get wrecked, and things get, they get vandalised a little bit. But if they're looked after and incorporated into this design and this development, then I can only think of it as a positive thing.
Jan, I think that's a really interesting proposal, isn't it? I mean, I know the areas that you're talking about, and you can extend it out to many of the communities on the west of the borough where there are private landlord garages in blocks. Some of them are council garages from North Warwickshire Borough Council that are falling into a state of dilapidation. They're full of settees from 1980, from what I can see. So
yes.
So part of the question becomes, how can we scope that? Can we? Doc, Mike, can we put a question to North Warwickshire Borough? Oh, you've gone live again. Can we put a question to North Warwickshire Borough Council about our own garages and any scope for looking at extending out? And then perhaps, if there are, I doubt whether there are any municipal garages proposed on these sites, or there will be, but clearly we could look at options for charging in public places or public parking areas. Dot, you got any views on that?
Yeah, we can pass that idea along, because it seems a very good idea in terms of that, particularly if we're the owners. It's only where it's the private individual that we would possibly have issues. In terms of the new sites, I know that the county council are particularly looking at on-street charging points, even to the point of using lampposts and things like this. So there's all various things that are being looked at, but I'll certainly pass that comment on to both our housing team who look after the garages here, but also to the county as well.
Okay, thanks. And if we could get a report back to the board on that issue, Doc, that would be good, please, by email. I mean, it's interesting because I was interviewed by the county last week about potential sites for on-street charging in the division that I represent, and one of the ambitions is to start getting people used to the notion of electric vehicles and bringing some confidence into the consumer market that you will be able to drive to certain locations and recharge without finding yourself with a flat battery and not being able to drive back. So even before we get into an infrastructure network that supports a whole raft of electric vehicles, there is this putting in of infrastructure to try and gain community confidence around their use. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting proposal. Members, do we have any more proposals before we move to the recommendations that are on page 15 of 76? No, thank you very much indeed. Right, there are two recommendations then: that the documents at Appendix A and B be approved for consultation, and then recommendation B is that the work on progressing the delivery of H7 be noted. So can I have a proposer, please, for the recommendations?
I'll propose that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Humphreys. And seconder?
I second it.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay. And Mr. Tobin, to you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chambers?
Agreed.
Councillor Clues?
Agreed.
Councillor Humphreys?
Agreed.
Councillor Jarvis?
Agreed.
Councillor Osborne?
Agreed.
Councillor Riley?
Oh, yes, agreed. Right, thank you, members. That brings us to the end of the agenda for this evening. So can I thank you for your time and your engagement tonight, and we'll look to see you soon. I don't actually have a date of next meeting on my agenda pack. Dot, do we have a date of next meeting?
No, not at the moment. That's something that we need to talk about. So yeah, we'll come back to members with some dates.
Okay, thank you much indeed. Members, I announce this meeting closed. Thank you very much.